I was struggling momentarily on what to use for an introduction for this video because it's been a couple days since I've uploaded, but I felt that that would be the easiest way to break the ice and say I'm back with another video to follow up on last week's video that I for sure definitely posted, because I would never just abandon the channel for like almost a year. Who would do that? That's like a wry move. Oh, you can see the old girl's levitating. We got a drain pan because I had to drain the radiator before it got chilly out. The combination is rocking and rolling. I would start it up for you, but I can't, and I'll explain why in a second. But the car came together beautifully. I'm ecstatic with how it ended up. The engine obviously is a 2JZGE. That's out of a 95-96 SC300, and it is built from top to bottom. The cylinder head remains unported, but it does have cams and valve train, stock size valves. We have a Plasma Man intake manifold, which is sick. I love the Plasma Man stuff. They do a killer job. Garrett Turbochargers was a very unexpected partnership that I could not be more grateful for. That entire team, the level of professionalism, it's there. They're awesome to work with, and I am absolutely grateful for their support. And that's not like a plug because they paid me to plug it. I just really mean that. That's a genuine comment. Everything came together awesome. Michael at Dynasty, you could see the fabrication to get this stuff to work together. The proximity from turbo to frame rail is tight. I'll get back into that shortly, but you still have a 3-liter 2JZ. We have an automatic in the car. Trying to get a stick shift together for this car was difficult. This is the transmission that I had set up and ready for it. This was a transmission that was originally ordered for an S550 Mustang that we had as a shop car at Dynasty. And if you look here, this tail housing, it's the Magnum XL. So the tail housing sits farther back than your standard Magnum or your Magnum F-Type. The tail housing is about 6 to 7 inches farther back than standard, which meant it was going to be difficult to get shifter alignment right. But I figured we would cross that bridge when we came to it. So thank God for Monster Clutch for stepping in to help. I fell short of my promises to them, and that's an apology I have to issue. Hopefully we'll be able to get a stick in it this next year. But winding back, this transmission, Monster Clutch, you can see it's still ready to rock and roll. That was sitting in this car when we were getting ready to finalize everything. The problem was the shifter alignment. You can see that plate's covering where the shifter hole is, but the shifter effectively got put right where my finger is, back here. And no amount of shifter relocation would make that a better situation. And a lot of people will say, why didn't you get a Sicky relocation shifter? That could have fixed it. Well, let me see. If you look right there, it is a Sicky relocation shifter. However, this design, this 4-bolt design, is different than any available Sicky relocation shifter. Not to mention, I had to go forward with it, not farther back. The majority of the relocation shifters they have are to relocate it farther backwards. They make a TR6060 relocation shifter that I was going to dabble with, but the amount of guess and check, I didn't want to risk anything, and an automatic transmission made sense because I had everything I needed for it, with the exception of a torque converter, which PTC, Dusty Bradford, spec'd me a PTC converter that immediately was gangbusters, which is a term old people use for good, if you were wondering. So the combination, like I said, remains largely unchanged from a chassis standpoint. However, I did rewire the entire freaking car with the exception of the taillights and headlights. You see a bunch of wires dangling. You probably can't because I have no light on here. But I redid all the chassis wiring. Now I'm down to 1 CAN keypad in the center. I still have my roll bar mounted switch panel that's going to come out this off season, which we're in the middle of. But new power wires to the front, redid CO2. The back, oh, probably help if I popped it, but the trunk area in a previous episode, I guess we can call them episodes, I went over how we plated that whole thing, show you how that ended up. So it's flat plated this, fuel tank obviously, a rollover vent valve, battery box, solid state relay cutoff, all of that stuff came together beautifully. From a nitrous standpoint, we're only using this to spool the turbo. We're not spraying it at all down track. Underneath the car, you can see fuel pump and the fuel cell sitting nicely. The rear end is another thing that we did change. Not dramatically, but we went from this Sandberg subframe kit. So they sell this as an 8.8 bolt-in subframe kit. A lot of people shit on these kits. A lot of people don't like using these kits. They claim they don't hold power and this and that and the other. So I'm here to say they do. They can. Pull this out. Spare diff housing. All right, so they can't hold power. I'll tell you what, let me pull this out, then we'll go over it. All right, so here's a few differences to highlight. You see this is an iron housing. This is out of like the Mark 7 Lincolns or whatever, the Thunderbirds. This is what was in the car last season. I have an aluminum housing now. That's just a spare housing. And the Sandberg subframe kit was in there last season. Now I have the Ronin subframe kit, which is a weld-in kit. This is a bolt-in kit. And this is the one everyone says, you can't make any power, you can't go fast on it. A bunch of keyboard warriors that don't actually race their cars, like me, that just say, you can't go fast, it's junk, blah, blah, blah. Well, I tested this thing to pretty extensive limits. It's been in the 120s and the 60 foot. It's gone 130s more than a dozen times. So let's look over this whole subframe kit and let's see if it can actually handle the power. Because if it can't, there's going to be indications that it wasn't having a good time. First indication. This bolts to the rear diff on both sides, right? You can see I had to have this welded because it's split. So it had to weld on both sides. So that thing split, that was fixed. Let's look at the other side. The other side is not broken. It's not split. You can tell though, it's not like the happiest thing in the world where some of this powder coat's chipping away, but that's also, a function of install. It could be a million things, but look at how bent it is. So obviously it wasn't having the best time in the universe. Now let's look at the subframe kit. Top side. You see the powder coat cracking. You can see underneath that weld is cracking underneath it. The other side, not as bad. We'll flip it over. Cracking all the way around. Cracking all the way around. Splitting. And then this side, it's hard to tell in the video, but that's splitting as well. So the people that say the Sandberg kits can't handle any power, you're wrong. They can handle power, just for how long? So this video is to help prove your point. Now, the other thing to mention is this kit, if you bolt this kit in as it sits, if you bolt this thing in on a 500, 600, 700 horsepower car, you'll probably never have any issues. If you try to go drag racing fast on these kits, this is what you have to look forward to. Obviously, I'm not promoting the one brand over the other. I don't give a shit which one you buy, Ronin or Sandberg. I don't have a dog in that fight. I can only tell you that the service I've received from both of those companies on a couple different occasions was not the best. And I'll leave it at that. I don't need to go into detail, but I don't care either way. Buy whichever one you want. I went with the Ronin kit because I saw those telltale signs of failure and I didn't want to risk anything. So I purchased the Ronin kit. And Michael at Dynasty, he welded that stuff up and this sucker cooked and had no issues from the rear end department. I also have no issues from the rear end department. If you were curious actually I do. I got crazy bad diarrhea randomly. And how much blood on your toilet paper is normal? And that may sound like a jokey thing, but sometimes if I get a little more aggressive than I should on the old TP situation, there's like splotches of blood and I don't know if I should see it. Just go in the comments and tell me if I should see a proctologist. Ooh, or like a doctor that's not a proctologist, like nose and throat doctor. Go there and ask him, just turn around, drop trowel, spread cheeks and ask if it's normal. That's probably the next episode. Okay, back to the engine department, which I keep saying department. Back to the engine compartment. And the weight. This car actually came in lighter than I expected. It was in the 2,500s, I believe, I don't know, I'll have to look it up, but 2,600 pounds without me in it. Engine side of things, like I said earlier, it's still a 3-liter 2JZ. Accelerated performance up in Ohio, rather, from where I am. Don at Accelerated, he did the billet mains in the engine and built the short block. The short block is all Manley components, so Manley Ultra I-beams, Manley platinum pistons with upgraded wrist pins, total seal rings, And then the cylinder head is full of manly valve springs, manly valves, manly everything in this engine. The only thing not manly in the engine is a set of Brian Crower camshafts. Those camshafts are their 280 280s. And shouts out to Brian Crower, because I actually broke one of these camshafts when I was installing the cylinder head onto the block, and it was my fault completely. And they helped me out and sent me a pair of cams for a slight discount as a, hey, you're an idiot, but we'll do what we can to help you out. So top to bottom, the engine's got all the good guts. Golby's cam trigger kit. One thing to note, if you're doing a 2JZ NA, a GE to a GTE, whatever the hell you want to call it, the GE head doesn't have a source for camshaft sensor, right? So Golby's has this cam trigger kit. Well, before I even got the car started, I got a message from the guys at C-Dub Racing down up in Kentucky with us. And C-Dub mentioned, hey man, replace all of the bolts with titanium bolts with the exception of the trigger bolt. Otherwise you may have trigger issues. So preemptively, before I did anything, that's what I did. I went ahead and I replaced all these with titanium bolts. I think Pro Bolt was the website, something like that. And then that one is just a mild steel standoff, and it hits my cam sensor just right. This thing fired up like a stock car for what it was. We have twin injectors on every cylinder. The wiring harness is for a Haltech Nexus R5 ECU. I did the wiring harness myself. I also screwed the harness up myself, and I'll explain that in a moment. But we have Haltech on board, we have Golby's, Garrett, Manly, Accelerated Performance. I mean, literally Plasma Man. Fat House Fab did the intercooler. You probably can't see it, but they did the intercooler. Just a ton of awesome products on this car, and I couldn't be more happy to work with these. Not to mention Buck Performance. What's up, Buck? He's a good dude. Dynasty High GN1A kit. A nice caption that says Kill Rye. If you're wondering, that's what that says, not Killery, because I appreciate being alive. Anyway, everything on this car came out beautiful. I'm stoked on it. Now let's talk about what I screwed up. So over here, you'll see a couple things. First of which, Haltech dash and my Nexus ECU. So I think I'm the first person to break a Haltech Nexus, which is dope. Gotta be first at something. And you'll see warranty paperwork for that as well. The warranty paperwork is as a result of, this thing has 4 25 amp outputs. Well, my number 3 output was defaulting to on with just power hitting the ECU, which was bizarre. They have internal fuses that should stop that from happening, but somehow I roasted that output. Well, when I was taking the transmission out to, actually I had to take the transmission out for this reason. I noticed that my harness that comes out from behind the firewall over the bell housing, the harness had been pinched between, you won't be able to tell or see, but there's an adapter plate for TH400 Power Glide to a 2J, and it had clearance, but when you bolted it all the way flush, the head of one of those bolts dug into the harness, and every so often, the main power wire to my radiator fan, output 3, was shorting to ground. And that was the only broken wire I discovered on the harness, and that was enough to roast that output. I don't know if it was spiking high or what the deal was, but credit to Haltech, they took the ECU back. They told me, grab another ECU. We have them on the shelf at Dynasty. Grab another ECU. We feel confident that this is something silly. Put it on your car, get to the track. Got to the track, was able to race the car, and they warranty fixed my ECU without a penny charge to me. And they also did warranty my dash without a penny charge to me. And both of those issues are issues I have never seen before. So having this like anomaly, for lack of better terms, be covered without hesitation was honestly awesome. I really did appreciate that. So shout out to Haltech for that, specifically Victor at Haltech, who has been in our corner at Dynasty and mine personally. The dude's great to work with, and stoked on how that all turned out. But like I said earlier, the car did make it to the track. Before we made it to the track, obviously we were on the dyno, and on the dyno, we had a failure where all of the torque converter bolts backed out simultaneously, the flywheel, and basically burned themselves into the flex plate, and they burned themselves into the aluminum billet flex plate from ATF. So what you just heard was the sound of the engine running away. It was able to hold, the converter was able to have a grip on that flex plate for just the amount of time it was basically making no power. So the moment it came in a boost, it runs away, tags red line in 0.6 seconds. It literally sounded like I broke an axle or something, broke a drive shaft without the crazy explosion. Like, it just ran away. At that point, we pull it off the dyno, we put it on the rack, we discover what the problem is. This is the day before we're supposed to be at this track rental. So I have limited numbers as far as power goes. I don't know how the car's gonna react. We put it on the rack, pull the trans, kind of patchwork the thing together. And by the end of the day, we started at 8 a.m. and by 6 p.m. the car was track ready, which it was, well. I am sorry for the potato video there. That's from an Android that was sent to me on Facebook and then put on my phone to be made into a video, which is how I make all my videos. However, that was me after we had finished getting it back together that night, getting on the brake and making, not even a test hit, but just making sure it would spool and letting go of the trans brake and making sure that the functionality was there. So now all I had left to do was bolt check the car, which I did the following morning, the morning of the track rental. I came into the shop 5, 6 in the morning and bolt checked everything I had put a wrench on, and we were loaded up and ready to go to the track. So the first hit off the trailer was me. My goal was to go 7s off the trailer. And it's not, obviously it's something I hammered Rye about. Like, I'm gonna do it off the trailer, clowning with him. I never had real expectations to be able to do it, but if it happened, it would have been cool. But taking a car, the amount of power I'd have to make, we hadn't even been on the dyno to make that kind of power. We didn't know where it was gonna make the type of power to do what we needed it to do. There's too many unknowns. So the first hit off the trailer was, I can't remember the boost level. It was low boost, it's been a minute. But either way, it was baby boost and the car had clicked off an 8-second pass, the first hit off the trailer. Also caught on fire, the first hit off the trailer. And the video you're gonna see in a second, if you look closely at the top end of the track, right after I go through the traps, you'll see a puff of smoke. And what that was, well, I'll show you. Oh, right there, look, under the car, see all that smoke? There you go. I was on fire. Oh, idiot me. I didn't drain the catch can. The catch can is not only my engine catch can, but it's my transmission's catch can too. And I emptied it before the dyno and I didn't touch it after that. So this went through 2 days of dyno testing and test hits out on the asphalt. And then the first hit, and I also changed the oil and overfilled the oil by a quart thinking it was a Trailblazer SS. And it puked oil on the downpipe, and you can, I don't know if you can make it out, but yeah, right there you see my melted harness. Anyway, the fire was impressively large and my cowl comes up to here. So from the cockpit, all I could see was plumes of flames coming out from underneath the hood, and I figured we were just done. The whole car was gonna burn to the ground. I ripped my fire safety deployment from inside the chassis, left the safety pin in the tank like an asshole, and obviously nothing, it wasn't able to put anything out. But I'm glad it didn't release the safety stuff, the fire juice, the juicy McSafety juice, because if it did, I wouldn't have been able to race later that day. So we drained the tank, we made sure nothing was destroyed from a wiring standpoint, and we got back out there. But yeah, first hit off the trailer, it went 887 on, it was honestly, I hate people, low boost, but this was not, I could have had a cup of tea down track because it was that chill. We had a good bit of time cleaning up and getting stuff ready for the next couple passes. So we were actually only able to get 3 total hits on the car that day. The second hit, we turned the boost up. The first hit, by the way, was 28 pounds of boost. So the most boost we run through this thing was 37, 38, 39, I don't know, 35. It wasn't a lot. But the first hit, 28 pounds of boost. The second hit, we turned it up to 33, 34 pounds. And the last hit, we were making 35 pounds of boost. So by looking back at dyno numbers, I hate doing it. I hate claiming dyno numbers and boost and this and that, but we should have been right around anywhere from 800 to 900 wheel horsepower on the last hit of the day. So the second hit, 34 pounds of boost, the car went 860, so we're already making progress. The last hit of the day, the car went 850 on 35 pounds of boost. We ran out of time at that point. The car was cooking. Play a couple clips of it right now from the track so you can see how it worked. And there you have it. The car goes 850 and we have a ton of room to grow. This video, I'm not going to go back and watch this thing before I post it. So I'm sure there may be some like timeline issues or maybe like inconsistencies in my narration. But it's also Christmas Day today. And this was done in November. Was the track rental? Wasn't it? Early November? I don't know. It's been a minute. So maybe after this video gets posted, I will start posting more regularly and being able to keep track of what I've actually done with this car instead of just remembering fondly how much money I've watched light on fire the last 6 to 8 months. But at any rate, I appreciate everybody for sticking with the channel while Rye was the only one making videos for a minute. And I look forward to continuing content production in the future. Merry Christmas. Have a blessed one. Happy birthday, Jesus.